What if I told you that one of the greatest engineering achievements in human history was built not with cranes, computers, or modern tools, but with iron chisels and human hands? And that the people who built it left behind a mystery so profound that engineers today, with all of our satellites, software, and supercomputers, openly admit they cannot explain it. This isn't a theory, this isn't speculation, this is something you can visit, something you can touch, something that sits right now in the Maharashtra state of India, completely visible, completely real, and completely inexplicable. 400,000 tons of solid volcanic rock, removed, gone, with no trace of where it went. What was left behind is not a ruin. It is not a remnant of something that once was great. It is still great, still standing, still precise, still, after over 1,200 years, defying our best attempts to explain how it was created. Welcome to Kailasa Temple, Cave 16 of the Ellora Caves, the world's largest monolithic structure, an 8th century masterpiece carved entirely from a single mountain of basalt, and one of the most profound unsolved mysteries in all of human history. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will never look at ancient civilization the same way again. Before we get into the mystery, let's make sure we understand exactly what we're talking about, because the sheer physical reality of Kailasa Temple is itself almost impossible to believe until you see it. The Ellora Caves are a UNESCO World Heritage Site located about 30 kilometers from Aurangabad in Maharashtra, India. There are 34 caves in total, carved into the Charanandri Hills between roughly the 6th and 11th centuries CE. They represent Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain traditions, carved over hundreds of years by successive generations of artisans. Cave 16, Kailasa Temple, is different from all the others. Not just bigger, not just more elaborate, fundamentally, categorically different in how it was made. Every other cave at Ellora is exactly what the name suggests: a cave, a horizontal excavation into a hillside, creating rooms and chambers. Kailasa is not a cave. Kailasa is a freestanding temple with gopura towers, a main shrine, a mandapa assembly hall, subsidiary shrines, colonnaded galleries, and a massive open courtyard that was created by carving downward into the top of a basalt plateau and removing all the rock around what would become the temple. The numbers are staggering. The structure stands 32 meters tall, roughly the height of a 10-story building. It stretches 84 meters in length and 47 meters in width. The temple covers an area of approximately 1,900 square meters, and every single cubic centimeter of it is cut from one continuous, unbroken piece of the Earth's crust. To put that in architectural perspective, Kailasa Temple is twice the size of the Parthenon in Athens. It was built at roughly the same historical moment, the 8th century, when the rest of the world was still constructing with stacked stone, mud brick, and timber. And its entire surface, every inch of those soaring walls, every pillar, every ceiling, every cornice, is covered in sculptural carvings of extraordinary complexity and detail. Scenes from the Ramayana, the great war of the Mahabharata, the cosmic battles between gods and demons, portraits of the goddess Lakshmi, the fearsome form of Ravana shaking Mount Kailash. All of it, every figure, every fold of fabric, every expression on every face, cut directly from the same single rock. There is no mortar, no masonry, no joints, no seams. One rock, one temple, one question: how? This is where the story stops being impressive and starts being genuinely, deeply unsettling. To create Kailasa Temple, someone, or many someones, had to remove an enormous quantity of rock. Not small pieces, not chips and dust. Hundreds of thousands of tons of hard, dense volcanic basalt. Basalt is not sandstone, It is not limestone. It is one of the toughest naturally occurring rocks on Earth, the same material from which oceanic crust is made. Carving it is extraordinarily difficult, even with modern diamond-tipped tools. The conservative estimate from geological surveys is that approximately 200,000 metric tons of basalt were excavated to create Kailasa. Other analyses, accounting for the full volume of the excavated area, put the figure closer to 400,000 metric tons. For reference, that is the equivalent weight of roughly 40,000 large African elephants, or approximately 2,000 fully loaded Boeing 747 aircraft. Now here is the question that has haunted archaeologists and engineers for over 2 centuries of modern study. Where did it go? When you remove 400,000 tons of rock from a mountain, you create 400,000 tons of rubble. That rubble has to go somewhere. It occupies space, it is visible from a distance, it creates a landscape feature. Debris from construction projects of even a fraction of this scale is readily identifiable in the archaeological record. We find ancient quarry dumps, rubble heaps, and spoil mounds routinely at excavation sites around the world. Around Kailasa Temple? Nothing. The Archaeological Survey of India has conducted extensive surveys of the surrounding landscape. There is no major rubble deposit, no ancient landfill site, no secondary usage of hundreds of thousands of tons of broken basalt in nearby roads, walls, or buildings. No ancient chronicler mentions hauling away mountains of rock. It is as though 400,000 tons of solid mountain simply ceased to exist. The standard academic response to this question is carefully worded. The rock, historians suggest, was removed gradually over an extended construction period, possibly 100 to 150 years rather than the 17-year reign of a single king, as tradition holds, and dispersed widely across a large geographical area in small quantities over many generations, used for road foundations, field clearance, building infill. It is a reasonable hypothesis, but it is only a hypothesis, because the evidence for it is exactly as abundant as the evidence for any other explanation, which is to say, there is none. Set aside the debris question for now. Let's talk about what was actually carved and why it is technically extraordinary. Structural engineers who have studied Kailasa in detail consistently report the same finding. The load distribution across the temple is not approximate. It is not close. It is exact. The pillars bear weight in precise proportion to the structural demands placed upon them, as calculated by modern finite element analysis software. The corbelled ceilings transfer load to the walls in patterns that match contemporary structural engineering calculations. This matters enormously because of the method of construction. Kailasa was carved from the top down. The roof was the first thing created, the floor was the last. This means that the architects, before a single chisel stroke was made, had to carry entirely in their minds, or on some plan we have never found, the complete three-dimensional geometry of the finished structure, accurate to the centimeter, and execute that geometry over the course of decades without ever being able to see the whole picture at once. In modern construction, if a beam is slightly misaligned, you tear it out and replace it. At Kailasa, if a pillar was carved even slightly off position, the entire load path was compromised. There was no correcting a mistake. There was no adding material back. Every decision was irreversible. And yet the pillars are plumb. The arches are true. The proportional relationships between structural elements are consistent to within margins that modern surveyors have measured and found to be remarkable. Then there are the carvings themselves. Several sculptures at Kailasa employ a technique called undercutting. where stone is removed from beneath a carved figure, leaving it projecting out from the wall, apparently suspended in air, supported only at its back or at narrow points. At Kailasa, some of these undercuts extend over a meter in span, with the remaining stone at the support point sometimes less than 2 centimeters thick. The artisans who executed these carvings understood the material at a level that can only be described as mastery. They knew exactly how much stone to leave, where the grain ran, how force would travel through the rock. So where does this leave us? We have a structure whose debris has never been found. Engineering precision that matches the output of modern design software. Astronomical alignments spanning thousands of kilometers, accurate to fractions of a degree. A sophisticated mathematical design system whose acoustic predictions are borne out by measurement. Kailasa Temple is a genuine scientific mystery. What it tells us, most fundamentally, is this. The ancient world was not simple. The people who built Kailasa were not primitive. They possessed knowledge, mathematical, astronomical, acoustic, material, and spiritual, that was the product of a civilization of profound depth and sophistication. 400,000 tons of rock was removed from a mountain. A temple of impossible precision was revealed inside. And somewhere, in the space between what we know and what we cannot yet explain, the builders of Kailasa are still waiting for us to ask better questions. If this video made you think, drop a comment. Tell me, what do you believe happened to the missing rock? If you're new here, this channel exists to take ancient mysteries seriously. The past is not finished with us yet.